Welcome to another episode of Demystifying Gay Porn. My name is IK Grande, and if you've watched gay porn in the past 12 years, I've definitely helped you get off. So today I had a conversation with a gentleman who heard my last podcast, inviting different fetishes so we can talk about them. And I found this very, very interesting, so I immediately invited him down so we can have a conversation about it. It's not something that is incredibly common, but it's something that's in front of our faces all the time. So you can kind of understand why people would like something like this. What we're talking about is macrophilia. And macrophilia is basically the love of or the fantasizing of giants or giant things. So big and small, but really big and really small. So without further ado, this is Luke. I'd like to introduce you to Luke.
Hey guys.
So what can I say?
Well, there's a lot to say. There's a lot that goes into this whole idea of macro, and it's not exactly something that you would necessarily think of or is something that you would like jump to, but I think it grows from a young age.
Yeah, but think about from a young age is a perfect setting for this.
Yeah.
Think about what you just said there. If you see it at a young age, where are you seeing it?
Well, me personally was through TV.
Yeah, everybody. So the reason why I say that is because, it's if it has a term, there are plenty of people that do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Tell me what your first instinct or the first thing that you saw
that led me into this.
That led you into it.
There's multiple things. So the best one I can think of is Sesame Street. There was an part or an episode or a skit within Sesame Street that I was watching when I was a kid. I mean, I had to be like 7-ish, 8-ish, something like that. And it involved this speck, and it was like it was like based on Robin Leach's Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It was that theme, except it was someone interviewing very, very, very small person and a very, very large person. And the small person was a dot living inside like a cardboard milk carton, like just a dot jumping around. And then the very, very large person was a giant that was getting out of bed. And you happen to see just the bottom of the bed, and then all of a sudden you hear rumbling, and then the giant gets up, and you see his 2 feet come down, and he puts his feet in slippers, and then goes and brushes his teeth, and his toothbrush is like a broom, like an obvious broom. So I remember as a kid, I was like, oh my god, like that intrigued me. It just like drew me right in, and like I just wanted to explore it and like basically fantasize about that situation. And I think a lot came from there. Like it just opened it up, as if a window was open that wasn't open before.
So Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Where they teach us stuff.
And it was a beautiful show about learning, yeah.
But it's also subconsciously teaching us things as well. But we're not going to go there.
No, it's a whole different conversation, yeah.
So from there, what happened? Like what developed?
An interest, like a focus.
How did you take something that was a fantasy like that and apply it to real life?
Healthy imagination. So my imagination like ran wild all the time, not just because of that situation, just in general. Like I lived inside my head when I was growing up, whether that's good or bad, whatever. I just was always in my head thinking about things. So I remember liking that scenario and liking basically the power of the larger person versus the insignificance and lack of power of the smaller person. And that dynamic like fueled a lot of thought. Like I always would play around with that, and it intrigued me to the point of exciting me to the point of then getting aroused eventually from it, like developed into that.
Wow. That's really thought out, like really broken down.
Yeah. Well, cause I've had a lot of time to think about it. Cause like, I feel like I live like a double life, like I'm a cool double agent, but not that cool, because that kind of interest I look at as one thing. I separate it and then look at myself and I'm like, that's not me, but I enjoy it. It's weird. Okay. I think it's a taboo. It's something that most people wouldn't understand or would look at not positively. They would look down at it saying, oh, there's something wrong with you, or yeah, you're looking at it wrong. Like, that's weird. And I was terrified of having that experience. So I knew I liked it. I didn't really care what people thought of it. So I kept it private, and it was just my thing. And I think that's what, at least for me, made it like a little more complex, because when you're able to talk about something or be like, oh yeah, well, I love blue walls. Like, that's just my thing. I was like, oh cool, you're a blue wall guy. That's awesome. Like, they just take it and go with it. But then there's some things that doesn't happen. You know, you get a different response, and you just, I don't know. It's not easy to navigate at a young age, because I knew I was into it.
How has, from the time that you were fantasizing all this stuff, how has, like, coming across this stuff now, like, bloomed or taken off?
Well, it's changed a lot. So when I first started being curious about like size difference, and for me, so specifically, I like, everyone has like a spectrum. So I enjoy being smaller and having someone who's larger than me. That whole combination of things creates a whole genre for me. Like, it's a fusion of all these things. But that being said, going on the internet at a young age, when internet started to become possible, like, because I remember when I was in like grade school, like 5th grade, which was probably like the early 90s, there was internet, but there wasn't much on it. And like, I didn't know how to navigate it really. So it later on, like, I'd say at the end of the 90s, maybe early 2000s, that's when all of a sudden I figured out, like, I could ask a question and find stuff. And when I started doing that, there was sites out there. There were like groups, Yahoo groups. There were pictures that popped up, random websites here and there, very, very rarely, that dealt with it and would make like a montage, and it would be like an edited picture that created a situation that I liked. And I was like, oh my God, this like fueled me. Like, it's a real thing. I don't have to forget about it because there's other people who also like it. I'm not like an outlier, not a freak. It's just, you know, it's just something different that people get into. And that was like really reassuring, because like, you realize that it might be specific, but based on the number of people on the planet, like, there's probably some other people that think similarly.
And what if like the person that created what you're watching was also into that, and his best way of conveying it was putting it on film?
That's where I've thought that it's not 100% that way. I think there's a very important imagery that exists with that situation. To that point, think about if you're trying to convey a story when people are less educated. If you want to convey power, control, dominance, any of those alpha situations, a giant is a very quick and clear way to be like, oh, he's bigger than me, so he has power over me. It's a very strong imagery conveyor. So I think like it was probably used at a certain point to convey things. So almost like that imagery had a beneficial use for explaining something to people, but people misinterpreted it, or people allowed it to play out differently in their head. And that created basically, I think, what I might be into. Because growing up, you hear stories, you hear fables, and they involve giants. So it's like, it's almost like seeds were laid, and that one happened to like stick with me.
I can see that. That's a great explanation for it.
And for me personally, like I said before, I felt that it made me an outlier, like in being into something like that. Also made me want to understand a little better, because I wanted to figure out like, well, why am I into it? Like, what did I do wrong? Which I didn't start until I was older. Like, when I was younger, I just was like interested in it. I didn't think anything beyond that.
Well, you became ashamed.
Yes, exactly. I felt shame. Exactly.
So what does it mean to be macro?
It can mean many things. For me personally, or specifically, I should say, it means being into the idea of another man being impossibly bigger than you. Like, let's say I'm 6 feet tall, and someone walks next to me and they're like 89 feet tall, but similar build and shape of a human being, like a humanoid giant, because a lot of times giants are looked at as like big, fat, ugly beasts. I don't like that. Like, that's ugly. That's not like exciting to me, because I look at it as a fantasy, like in a sexual sense. So when I see a giant, I see like someone similar, like build to me, just way, way bigger, and has like a dominance thing, like wants to like notices me and wants to like control me or own me or destroy me or any of the above, you know, like something that I don't have a say in, you know. And that fantasy like works for me. It like gets me like really turned on and interested in it. And like, I like to play it out in my head, and I don't know why. I wish, that's the thing that bothers me sometimes, because I'm like, well, why do I like that? Like, I hear myself and I catch myself in the moment of like getting really turned on by something. I'm like, why? Like, that's what's going to do it. Like, I could find the dumbest thing and all of a sudden, boom, I'm good. I can like climax and I'm good for the night. Like, I don't need more than that. It's so silly. Like, I feel like a lot of people need like this ornate thing and like it has to be so exact, or not even exact, but just like, which I mean, technically I'm explaining myself because I need it to be a very precise or a very certain situation, but I feel like mine's really easy because I can do it in my head and that's it, you know? So I wonder about it a lot. Like, why do I think that? Like, why do I want that?
Do you think it's applicable the same way with giant women?
Very interesting question. And I'm happy you brought that up because that's another aspect of it, because what I'm into is more, it's homosexual. I like a large man and a small guy, a small man. When you switch around and all of a sudden the woman is the large one, she's the giant, she's a giantess. She's no longer a giant. So it's a different situation. It's a different word, everything. That's more okay. There've been mainstream movies made about that, like the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. What was her name? Who was in it? Daryl Hannah. Like, that was a big deal. Like, that's my community. It just alienates me because I happen to like it in a homosexual sense, whereas that's heterosexual and that's okay. Like, producers and Hollywood or be like, oh, that's not a problem. Like, we get that. But when it comes to like anything homoerotic, they're like, oof, like we can't touch that. Even now, you know, it's not like it's changed that much because nothing. I mean, there've been some things like Jack Black did a Gulliver's Travels thing at one point, but it doesn't have the same feel. Like, if you watch that Daryl Hannah movie, you're like, oh, there's definite sexual undertones in it. Like what she's wearing, how revealing you see. Think about how much of her skin you see constantly. What does that say? It's not like, oh, they're trying to make her like.
Maybe somebody should make an Attack of a 50-Foot Man.
That would be great. I think today people would watch it. It's an unexplored genre in the mainstream. Maybe it's not meant for mainstream. I'll admit to that. Fine. That's possibly it. But like, it can be explored. We explore everything now. We have every show about everything. Well, not really, but like.
Yeah, we do. There's everything for everyone. So there should be a macro channel.
I feel like people into macro are also very specific. They're like persnickety. Like, oh, I like it only when the lighting is from above.
That's what gets them off.
But that leads into a whole other thing about how now you can look for or create whatever you want in a porn sense. Like, it's all out there, or a lot of it's out there. So you can be hyper specific in your needs and your wants. So it breeds this like very, very fine and delicate situation that everyone needs to like get their jollies off, you know?
Let's say they were going to shoot Attack of the 50-Foot Man, and they said, well, you know, we heard you on this podcast, with your host, I.K. Grande. They said, well, we heard you on there, and we think that you would be amazing to do casting for this. Who would you cast?
I'd be happy to do that. Well,
with today's stars.
Oh, well, I mean, I would love Zac Efron. I mean, that he is a delicious man. I think also, I mean, again, my opinion here, I could be wrong about this, but from how I see it, to be into this, depending on what side of it you're on, because when you're giant, you're like more in control, and it's just like you get what you want. Versus the other end where you're the small guy, you're like, you don't have a choice, and you have to be like, you have to just let go. And I think some people can't wrestle with that, which is why it works for people, because they can fantasize about it, but they can't like let it wash over them, you know, because like that's a lot. You're saying, well, okay, I'm meaningless, but in the craziest way, that's helped me a lot, because the less you like, not to say the less you care about yourself, but like the less you hold yourself on this crazy pedestal in high regard, the better life gets. Because I think a lot of the benefits of this world are given or are earned by people who don't focus on themselves. It sounds crazy, and I'm sure there's many reasons to say I'm wrong, but I personally believe that I'm correct about it, that the less concern you have over you in general, this is a very general thing, you can kind of get through life a little easier. Because if you notice, people who are very loud and abrasive and like have to like explain themselves and display it constantly. Constant peacocking. No one likes that. Once in a while, of course, everyone needs to do it. It's like, get over yourself. Like, let's move on and like do something together as a species.
The role of the giant and the small person, right? In your personal life, how easy was that to find? People that you were comfortable telling, or people that you were, you met because of that?
Extremely simple answer. It's wildly difficult for me to explain it to anybody because it's such a departure from how I see myself. So I have trouble talking to someone about it because it's like vulnerability for me. Because when I say that, it's like, oh, again, my view of it or my opinion. Well, I'm into this weird thing that goes against, I assume, how you see me, and this is what it is. Like, it's awkward. It's not something I really like to talk about. If it comes up in conversation, yes, I'll run with it and I'll see if I can break a wall and open up. But it's not something I've been able to talk to many people about. But through a forum that I'm a member of, I was able to meet people locally.
I feel like when there are people or a community that wear dog masks and wag their tails and stuff, for a community like that to exist, the macro community could exist out in the open too, because they're fantasizing about another human. It's a different species, but one is subservient to the other and catering to their needs.
Right. It all goes back to everything. Positive, negative, binary, on, off, black, white things. Like, it's just everyone has a variation of it. Everything's on the spectrum. So yeah, some people like to be owned by an owner while they're a pet. Some people like to get fucked in the ass. Some people like to fuck someone in the pussy. Like, there's always a role. Like, everyone enjoys being one or the other or something in between. That's the reality of existence and life.
Going back to the forum, you met people on the forum.
Yeah, so that was a huge help.
What did you Google to get this forum?
To be honest, I'm not really sure what exactly linked me up to the forum, but there were sites, like there's a site, it used to be a site called Dimensions, which was very early on, like that's mid 90s, maybe late 90s. Someone created a site and it had some montages, no videos, that was like way too advanced, but it had stories, had like fantastic stories, like really like specific mini stories about like this scenario or this genre with like certain scenarios played out. And a lot of people knew it. It was like a big, like a very popular site for the community. And then from there, I wound up finding, I think, a link. Maybe they had links, a lot of sites had links to other sites. There was a link, I think, to this forum and Coil Fist, and it like brought me to this whole new existence. Like this was more specific for me because Dimensions were just stories and a few occasional montages, whereas
yeah, but stories can get hot. But this site, Coiled Fist,
it's like a forum, and like there was like a general board where everyone could like post whatever they found, like ask a question, post a picture of something they found or whatever, and it was really cool for me because I was like, oh, there's people out there that are very similar to me, and they are just normal people. Like, they're just existing in life and we're talking about it. And I was able to meet a couple people through it, and they were really cool people. Like, it sounds so basic and so like, oh, obviously, but when you experience it from like not knowing anybody and it being this personal thing that you don't tell anybody and you thinking it was weird, to meeting another human being that felt almost exactly the same way and had similar experiences, it's like, wow, this is like a real thing and it's okay. Like, it makes everything more manageable. And that was awesome. Like, that really helped me, to navigate life and to make sense of what I was seeing and thinking, at a young age. It's interesting. They had just posted something on there about what did you do for content before a certain time if you're above a certain age. So a lot of these guys were like, oh yeah, I'm currently like in my mid 50s. And all we had was the Sears catalog and our imagination. And wow, I was like, yeah, I get that. I'm not that age. I'm a little younger. Not thankfully, but I'm a little younger. I get the mindset behind that. I understand what it was like because you had to like create nothing. create something out of nothing, basically, imagination wise.
How good is it getting for people who are into macro or macro?
Visibility as far as what you can find.
Yeah, like
it is such a golden age right now. Yeah, because you can find anything for free. If you have basic understanding of how to use the internet, you can find anything. Once you've found it, you can then hone in on that particular thing and get more of it. And then if that content isn't good enough for you, you can then buy it. There are literally online production houses through multiple sites that if you'll say, oh, well, I kind of want this model to do this thing with this scenario, they'll be like, okay, that's $150. Done. And it's within a week or two, you have it given to you. Or you can buy pre-produced stuff that they just have like a quick preview of, and you can look through and be like, oh, I like that. Okay, I'll take it. And it's like $6 or $10. It's like, it's very affordable and like very simple. That when I was growing up, that wasn't a possibility. Number one, I probably didn't have a credit card or money, whether it was expensive or cheap. I didn't have the ability to do that. But the fact that now you can just pay a small fee and get exactly what you want, it's pretty crazy. I don't know if that's good. I enjoy it. I'm not complaining, but that's...
Before doing this interview, I read up on a couple of things and came across a couple of pictures and came across a couple of like movies, like popular movies.
That's the funny part. Because there's someone else on the forum that like basically takes any popular culture or mainstream video or clip or whatever that happens to involve macro and makes little like music videos out of it. And I'm always blown away by the sheer amount of content he can find. And I more and more start realizing, well, it's a common thing. It's just, we look at it differently. It does something different to us. Just like how, I don't know, what other fetishes out there that like you can see something in every day and it like means something different to you. Or think about this. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who look at like, again, guys in shorts when they don't wear underwear.
If there's a Tumblr page I was a part of, there's definitely been times that I've Googled
dick slits.
Well, yeah, but it's gotten so specific that you can Google certain words together and something will come up. So I wanted to ask, in relationships, how important is this?
That's a tough one. So it's very important. It's like a central theme. So that central theme is like the highway which allows me to climax, to enjoy anything, you know? And that also makes you have to live inside your head a lot. You like, it's not that you disconnect, but like to get your rocks off, you have to kind of like get to that place. I calm myself down in thinking that that's anybody. I feel like anyone has their situation that sits in their head or that reoccurs when they're like horny or whatever that might get them to come or to climax. But like, I feel like for me, this situation is like one of the few, you know? So yeah, it plays a central theme and it has a profound effect on a relationship. Absolutely.
So another thing that I read up on, last thing I want to touch on with you is, Size Con. What have you read?
I have read that it's like...
I just really quickly want to preface because that sounded like we were plugging.
I know we're not.
The reason why I even brought it up like that was because of the fact that one of the top things that came up and all these things that they promote, like there's this woman who inflates and that's a thing too.
Really?
Like her tits are huge. Yeah, so she does something and it's called something specific, but her thing is big boobs and men love that. And when I saw that, I remember thinking, I remember seeing cartoons and stuff growing up of big tits. And I see like you're growing up watching all of this and then you get to a certain age and you look back, and when you look back, you see a whole bunch of other people that were like affected by certain things. I think men who like big tits like that, they watched the same things we did and they took from it what they wanted to.
Right.
That's crazy. The effect that television.
I wonder if not having seen that episode of Sesame Street, or not having experienced something that, like, I guess in a sense triggered me to be interested in that, who would I be? It's had such a prolonged and pretty impactful effect on me that that's part of me. Like, it's just me. You can't like separate the two. I wonder what it would be like if that didn't happen or hadn't happened.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like telling the first person or first friend that you were into this?
Very nerve-wracking, because it's like very revealing, mm-hmm. and made me feel very vulnerable, because it opened me up to have someone say, "Oh, you're weird," or like, "That's odd. What's wrong with you?" But it was a positive experience, to be honest. I was able to it was a friend, and I kind of explained the idea, and in the best way possible, he was like, "Oh, that's intriguing. Like, that's not weird. It's interesting that you think that. It's funny, but like interesting." And that was enough for me. I was like, I wasn't ostracized. I wasn't like looked down upon because I said this. So yeah, it was a good experience.
How did identifying, right, as macro negatively affected things in your life, or positively?
In a negative way, it makes me focus on things that like aren't good, or I would rather not, kind of thing. An example of that would just be like, I don't know, I focus a lot on like feet and like people like stepping on things. And it's not a great thing to like think about and focus on, but I enjoy it. I absolutely enjoy it. I'm not like unhappy because I look at it, but sometimes I'm like, oh, there should be something else you could do with your time. There's something else you could focus on, whatever, this is not the best. Yeah. But in a negative sense, yeah, it just makes me feel like sometimes I'm not like proud of it or happy about it. But again, I think a lot of things are like that.
That's how everything starts. But when I came out as gay, I wasn't, or the first time I had a gay experience, I wasn't happy about it.
Yeah.
Which sucked. You're happy during the moment while it's happening, then afterwards you feel like shit.
Yeah.
We were going on about SizeCon.
Yes, I'm absolutely going. It's the first time I'm going to go. I'm very excited about it. And I don't know what to expect.
It's in February at some point. I'm not sure what day, but if you guys are interested in looking this up, it's called Macrophilia. It's macro. I'm sure if you put anything regarding porn, gay porn, and macro right behind it, it would come up. So check out what this is, and if it's something that you might enjoy, or something that you think your friend likes, or something like that, you never know. I want to thank my guest, Luke. You've been watching Demystifying Gay Porn. I am your host, Ike Grande. Demystifying Gay Porn can be found on every podcast directory, as well as YouTube. Demystifying Gay Porn is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Telegram, Discord. And if you like what you're watching and want to be a part of the process, head over to patreon.com/demystifyinggayporn, where you can help support this channel and I can continue making content like this. Once again, this is Demystifying Gay Porn. My name is Ike Grande, and if you watch gay porn, I've definitely helped to get off. Cheers.